I recorded an episode on Don't Wing It with Esther Littlefield. Esther is a business strategy coach. She hosts the Uplift Mentor Mind every month. And I was excited to have her come on the podcast, mainly because we have a lot in common in the fact of she has two podcasts. I've had two before. I paused Friends of a Feather, but now have Don't Wing It. And we commiserate a lot and joke about the bad podcast pitches that we get. And so I thought she was the very perfect person to have on Don't Wing It. So this is like Don't Wing It after the show, just hearing my thoughts and ways that what sparked my just sparked my imagination when we were talking. And so this is the after the show. Okay. And so on Don't Wing It, we talked about the 10 no-nos when you're podcast pitching. So one of them includes don't tell the podcast host that you want to sell your book. Like that's your main goal. Don't tell the podcast coach, listen to me. Don't tell the podcaster that just don't talk about about you without how you can serve their listeners. So it all went back down to relationships, also of serving others. And so you need to tune into that podcast episode. But the cool thing about it is that you can grow your podcast by being a guest on other people's podcast. And so that's what we were really honing in on, is to help you to know what to do, know what not to do. So pretty much if you take those no-nos, the 10 no-nos, and turn them on their heads and make them opposite, then you know exactly what to do. So I hope that episode is really helpful for you. But Esther and I talk a lot about this because we get a lot of podcast pitches. And I said this on the interview, but I'm going to tell you this a little bit more in depth here, because I had someone pitch me in the middle of my podcast pausing last year. Okay. So it was happening around this time, March, April was the first month that I paused it. Okay. So I had been doing it 6 years, podcasting for Friends of a Feather. And so I paused it, and in March were the last few episodes. So I got this pitch, I think probably in April, when it just happened. Okay. So I do not fault that person for this at all, but let me tell you what she did that was an incredible way to pitch herself. Number one, in her email, she talked about my podcast. And in her email, she talked about the segment that I had that was called Eat, Read, Love. And so my guests, when I had the guests on, I would ask, what are they eating, reading, and loving, to get us to know more. My listeners could get to know the guest better. And she mentioned that. She mentioned that in her email. So she emailed me. She included things to show me that she had listened to my episode. That's one of our no-nos, is make sure you listen. Like, don't just send an email, a cold call email, and don't ever listen to the podcaster's podcast episodes. Even if it's just one or two, you want to make sure that you do that. So, but anyway, back to this pitch. She had also included a video that was really cool about greeting me, saying, "Hey, Wren." And I think that is when she said, "Hey, if I was on your show and we did Eat, Read, Love, I would say I'm eating, reading, loving this." She also talked about how she could give value to my listeners. She talked about how what she could bring to the table, but it wasn't all about her. It was not aggressive. It was not pushy. It was wonderful. And if I had still had the podcast up and running, she would have been number one on my list because of the personal touches, the non-aggressiveness, the video, so I could hear her tone of voice. I could hear a sampling of what she would be like on the podcast episode. So I wanted to give you that for the after show for that episode. So it's episode 69, and it's podcast pitching the no-nos of your podcast pitch with guest Esther Littlefield. So I want you to check it out. Down below, if you will make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll have the after show every week after the podcast episode airs. And then you can click the link below to listen to the episode on your podcast app. So thanks for joining me. Remember, hit subscribe and then click the bell so that you will be ready to listen and watch when there's a new episode out. I'm here for you. I'm here to help and serve and help you with your podcast launch and your podcast to grow your business. All right, see you later.